welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is 10 commanders that I don't see anymore in the format. And in particular, I grabbed a group here that for me personally, I saw all the time when I first started playing. And I specifically grabbed a group of commanders here that were not actually printed in commander sets. They weren't meant to be commanders. And of course, the era that I started playing in, about 2015, maybe they had started doing, there's definitely some commanders here where it's like, okay, it looks like this was kind of, they were moving in the direction of we're starting to print legendary creatures so that they can be played as commanders. Certainly there's one here for me personally that I will get to that was the first one where I was like, kind of feels like they were doing that just for commander. But none of these were meant to be essentially commanders. They were just printed in regular old standard sets, and they were incredibly popular in the format. I saw them all the time, and I never see them anymore. It's kind of a nostalgic, going down the road of how things used to be played, but also talking about how much maybe the commander format has changed. And again, there might even be some commanders here that you guys have never seen before that I used to see like every single day when I first started playing commander. We'll start out with Tasigur the Golden Fang. That's right, the Banana Man. And this is kind of a funny one because this was a really popular modern card. Of course, this is played in modern all the time, and I was a big modern guy right before I got into Commander, and I played both for a long, long time. So, of course, I saw this guy in Modern all the time, and I saw this guy in Commander all the time. It is a good Commander. If you haven't seen it before, 5 and a black, Human Shaman 4/5 with Delve, which is a pretty good thing to have on your Commander because, of course, you can reduce Commander tax as well. It's very easy if you can keep filling up your graveyard to never pay more than 1 black mana for your Commander, no matter how many times it dies, right? And then you got the 2 and the 2 hybrid Simic mana. So, of course, this is a Sultai commander, which is very important. Mill the top 2 cards of your library, I believe is probably the new wording there. Then return a non-land card from an opponent's choice from your graveyard to your hand. It's kind of a neat politics commander, so there was that as well, because you have your opponent's choice. I've seen people do the whole opponent's choice sort of politics deck with this guy. Lands was a big one. For whatever reason, a lot of people like to do a Sultai lands deck, again, before we had more options for that. A lot of people did a Sultai lands deck with Tasigur. Mostly it was just, he was very open-ended. Again, he was just one of these very open-ended commanders that you could do a lot with. And of course, he was in Sultai colors, which that was the colors everybody wanted to play, right? Sultai colors were the best colors. Black, blue, and green were all the colors that had all the best commander stuff. Nobody wanted to play Boros. So Sultai commanders in general were just more popular. People played it in a lot of different ways. A lot of people just played good stuff decks, self-milling, recursion. There's a lot of different themes you could do here. Not a really powerful ability. This actually is a great commander for that reason. It's not like super obvious what you want to be doing, but it does have a lot that you can work with. And it's still a reasonably popular commander. It's all the way down to rank 222, but it's definitely a commander I have not seen in ages. I don't see it in the 99, nothing. I used to see this commander very, very regular, and I don't see it anymore. Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons. How many people are still playing this commander? I used to see it like crazy. And again, Amonkhet around here, Amonkhet, Innistrad, like that era is when I started playing commander, and also is the era in which they really started, it kind of seemed like they were starting to print commanders specifically for or legendary creatures for the commander format, and Hapatra certainly was one of them. Green and a black human cleric 2/2. When Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons, deals combat damage to a player, you may put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. But more importantly, you get this phrasing now that you see on every commander. And again, this is one of the first commanders, the first legendary creatures where you saw that, and now you see it on every single commander, or you see it a lot, which is whenever this niche thing happens, you get this payoff, which you obviously see, like 300 commanders a year. This is one of the first commanders that was like that. Whenever you put 1 or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, create a 1/1 green snake creature token with death touch. And it's like, okay, well, here's a very obvious theme we can build around. And of course, with Amonkhet, it fit with the, the limited format as well, because obviously they had a lot of black-green stuff in that theme already. So it fit with, what was going on in the in the constructed formats as well, I guess you could say. But of course, that gave you a lot to build around. And also, you could go down the rabbit hole and, oh, look at all these old Black Sun Zenith and all these old, mostly black cards. I don't know if there's any green, but mostly black cards that were putting -1/-1 counters on stuff that I could throw in my Hapatra deck. This commander was incredibly popular for a long time. One of the most popular commanders in the entire format because, again, just a great commander. Art's also really cool, but there was so much that you could build around, right? It is down to 299 in the format. I never see it anymore. Gisa and Geralf were the original, I would say, blue-black zombie commanders. There might have been more, but this is definitely one when it came out. And again, this came out right when I started playing Commander, and immediately it's like, blue-black zombies, sweet, right? 2 blue and a black, human wizard 4/4. When Gisa and Geralf enters mill 4 cards, of course, that works with the zombie theme typically, and works even better with this next ability. Once during each of your turns, you may cast a zombie creature spell from your graveyard. Wow, great, right? That's great value. And again, it's funny to think now, this commander came out, now people would just laugh at it. It would be laughable how, that's all I get. That's all I get on my commander is once during each of my turns, I can cast a zombie spell in my graveyard. Like, who cares? This was really popular when it first came out. It was the go-to zombie commander for a long time and completely fallen off. I maybe people play this in the 99 of their zombie decks now, like their Wilhelm decks or something, right? Wilhelm just completely trashed Gisa and Geralf as a blue-black zombie commander. This is rank 300, so right below Hapatra. Haven't seen it in forever. Maybe you still have one in your closet collecting dust they haven't played in a while. I imagine a lot of people just switch to Wilhelm or some other. There's probably a few Dimir commanders now that are just better zombie commanders than this one, but it was very popular for a while. Zurgo helmsmasher was probably the best example of, sort of an OG Voltron commander. This was obviously not meant to be a commander. Again, you could argue whether this era they were already doing that or not, but it just made a really great Voltron commander, and I saw it all the time. So 2 red, black, and a white Orc Warrior 7/2 with haste. It's a great thing to have on your Voltron commander. Also a great thing to have on your Voltron commander is that 7 power. Again, that's sort of that magic number that you're looking for with as far as commander damage goes, right? Attacks each combat available, no problem. That's what we want to be doing. Has indestructible as long as it's your turn, so really easy to keep them alive on your turn. And whenever a creature dealt damage by Zurgo helmsmasher dies this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it so it gets bigger. So it really was doing everything you wanted to do with a Voltron commander. He's big, he's scary, he's got haste, he gets bigger, he's hard to kill. This was a very popular Voltron commander. I will also say it's a 3-color commander, and back then, there must have been, I don't know how many Mardu commanders, there maybe 6 or 7. There wasn't a lot, right? There was not a lot to choose from. So even if you just wanted to do a Mardu deck and commander, you only had a handful of options. So this was one of them, right? So that plays into a little bit of how popular some of these commanders were, especially the 3-color ones like Tasigur and Zurgo. They were just more popular just because you only had, there's like 7 or 8 Sultai commanders, and there was like 7 or 8 Mardu commanders, and that's all you had to choose from. So a lot of people went after it. But it was also sort of the quintessential Voltron commander, which, of course, used to be a more popular theme in the format. Rank 325 now. So I've seen this guy. Like, when's the last time you've seen a Zurgo deck? How many people watching this video right now have never seen this guy before? It's been a while. Rhys the Redeemed. And this was the sort of go-to or quintessential token theme. And again, the token theme was best in white and green colors. This is before we had a bazillion token commanders. And this one was, and this also might have been the only commander that was 1 mana. So there was that as well. 1 in a white hybrid mana. So play the white or the green. Elf Warrior 1/1, pay 2 and a hybrid Selesnya mana. Tap, create a 1/1 green and white Elf Warrior creature token. Pay 4 and 2 hybrid Selesnya mana, and tap for each creature token you control. Create a token that's a copy of that creature. So pretty powerful ability. Not only was this a popular commander, it was a pretty scary one as well. You definitely had to be on your guard. Of course, your commander only costs 1. You get it out right away. A lot of people did elf tribal because, of course, your commander's an elf, and elves and tokens do synergize pretty well together. This was the go-to. This was the go-to token commander. It was really the only one, I think. Populate, obviously, the white and green colors is the populate colors. You had a lot to work with this guy, and again, it was a pretty scary commander that you had to be wary of when you were playing against it. completely fallen off. I haven't seen it in forever. I imagine it probably goes in the 99 of a lot of decks now. Ranked 363 now in the format. Probably used to be top 20. Now it's 363. When I started playing the Commander format, we just got Amonkhet, probably right after I started playing, I think. And again, that was the era where they really very clearly were printing legendary creatures specifically to be commanders. And we got the God series, and you could put all of them here. I chose the Locust God. You could put any of them in, the Scarab God, or what's the Scorpion God, the -1/-1 counter. There was three of them, right? I saw all of them all the time. The Locust God I probably saw the most, and that's probably the one that fell off the most. I don't know if it's because it just became this sort of powerful combo-y commander that it really did. Again, it's one of those commanders, and there might even be some other commanders here. Actually, probably the next two commanders, as it happens, that would fall into the category of it was just kind of too powerful to be in a casual commander game, but also not good enough to be in a CDH game. So you're sort of in that twilight zone where you don't really fit anywhere, right? You can only bring your Locust God deck to a really high-powered casual game, basically. 4 red and a blue God 4/4 with flying. Whenever you draw a card, create a 1/1 blue and red insect creature token with flying and haste. I mean, that's pretty good, right? 2 blue and a red, draw a card, then discard a card. That ability was almost never used. Of course, you didn't have to because it became a wheel deck. Very quickly, it became a wheel deck. I think there's a couple of combos that you can go pretty much infinite with this guy, right? Skull Clamp. I mean, it's not infinite, but it certainly is absurd. Kindred Discovery is, I'm pretty sure that's infinite, right? Because the insect comes into play, draw a card, repeat the process. Pretty sure that goes infinite. The big reason that these guys were so popular in the format is because when the Locust God dies, return it to owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So of course it kind of was removal proof a little bit. I mean, it obviously wasn't removal proof, but you could avoid that commander tax, which is so, again, when you have a commander that's a removal magnet, oh, kill my commander, okay, I'll let it go to the graveyard, and then I'll return it to my hand at the beginning of the next end step, and then just recast it. And it was really hard. You had to exile it, right? Just killing it was not good enough. And when you have a commander with that powerful ability, just having your opponent replay it on the next turn, no problem, right? I saw this guy all the time. It was a really, again, it fell into the category of it's almost too powerful a casual commander game, right? So what do you do? And maybe this is the case where it's obviously still a very good commander, but I don't think it's good enough to play in CDH, and it's kind of too powerful for a casual commander game. So that might have been one of the reasons why it fell off, because okay, I have a Locust God deck, where do I play it? Nobody wants to play against me, right? Still ranked 237, not bad, but has fallen off an absolute ton. I almost forgot this guy existed. I haven't seen him forever. The Gitrog monster. That's right. And this is the one that I was alluding to when I talked about, this was the first card that I saw where I just thought it was so unusual. I had not started playing Commander yet when this card came out. And I was like, I just thought it was such a weird card. And I'm like, what do you do with this? And I was trying to make him work. I was playing Modern at the time. I was trying to make him work in Modern because I'm like, that's a really powerful ability, right? 3 black and a green, Frog Horde, 6/6 Death Touch. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice the Gitrog monster unless you sacrifice a land. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. That's pretty great, of course. But really, and again, this, just like with Hapatra, that phrasing that we see on so many commanders now, this was maybe the first commander where it's pretty clear they did this on purpose to make this a very build-aroundable commander. Whenever one or more lands is put into your graveyard from anywhere, draw a card. So of course, so much you can do there. There wasn't really a lands commander. Again, what lands commander existed? I mean, I guess Omnath, which is another commander that could be, I mean, I've talked about him before, another commander that was absolutely everywhere when that was sort of the go-to lands commander, but that was red and green, and of course, if you want to do it black and green, then Gitrog was your guy, and of course, because it is put a land card into your graveyard from anywhere, there was a lot more you could do, especially with the black, right? That whole, whenever this thing happens, you get the draw card. This was kind of the first commander really to do that. And of course, it skyrocketed. It was one of the most popular commanders in the format for a long time. It still is, right? It's not like I'm talking about this commander and everyone's like, Gitrog monster, what's that? I've never heard of that before. Everybody knows, right? Still a really popular commander, and it's obviously really powerful. And this one, again, like the Locust God, might fit into that category of, I mean, this definitely was played in CEDH for a while. There's the combo with Dakmar Salvage and all that, right? I don't know if anyone still does that. It is certainly a commander that when I would see it in a casual game, I'd be like, "Ugh." Like you're really pushing it. Like it's just so powerful that you almost can't build a casual deck with it, right? It's just too good. Anytime one or more lands is put in your graveyard from anywhere, you get to draw a card. That's crazy, right? So it was really tough to find a spot to fit your Get Robbed Monster deck if you had one. Again, I don't think it's good enough for playing CDH anymore. So what do you do with it? So maybe that's one of the reasons it fell off. It's now ranked 230 in the format. It really fell off. Again, this is like top 10. Now it's 230. Even in Golgari, if we're just talking about the black-green decks, this was I guess it wasn't the most popular because Marin was the most popular Golgari commander for a long, long time. It was number 2 for sure. And if we're just talking about the Golgari commanders, there is now 10 commanders that are more popular than Gitrog. It comes in at number 11 just in black and green colors. So it's really fallen off. Even Yargle and Multani is more popular. And again, what's the reason there? Maybe because Yargle and Multani feels like a more casual commander. And the Gitrog doesn't really feel like a casual commander. So when I bring it to a casual table, everyone just complains. So what am I supposed to do? I guess I'll just take it apart and make a Yargle and Multani deck or something, right? So that might play into it as well. Possibly the same can be said for Alesha, who smiles at death. This was definitely a commander that was super popular, still really popular, but crazy popular when I first started playing the commander format. Easily the most popular Mardu commander. And again, fell into the category of there was these really powerful, like combo-y things, sort of game-ending things that you could do with the deck that made it feel not so casual. So maybe that has sort of made people shy away from it. 2 in a red, human warrior, 3/2 with first strike. When it attacks, you may pay 2 Orzhov mana. If you do, return target creature or card with power 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. And this commander is doing exactly the kind of stuff that I love. I immediately went after this commander when I first started playing the format and wanted to make a deck with it because I just really loved. I thought that was a really neat ability, and finding all these neat cards that you can recur from your graveyard. And unfortunately, I found out pretty quickly that there was these combos that the Alesha deck did, with Karmic Guide and Revelark and stuff. And I mean, really, you can do the Karmic Guide Revelark combo in just about any deck. You don't need Alesha for that. So the fact that people were doing it in the Alesha deck they just did it there because it fit. You really didn't need to. There was also the Master Cruelties one that people would do, obviously. That was just a one-hit kill, right, with your commander. So there was always that as well. And again, because of stuff like that, it makes it so that everyone is going to be, okay, just kill your commander, right? It kind of makes you not want to play your deck because, okay, I'm playing my Alesha deck, which has all these neat cards that I can reanimate from my graveyard and stuff. And as soon as I get my Alesha out, somebody just removes it right away because they assume I'm going to Master of Cruelties them. Again, a lot of these commanders that used to get played back in the day, it was always everyone was playing the most powerful version, and it sort of ruined it. Here's a great commander that was essentially ruined because everyone just ran out there and made the most powerful version, and either nobody wanted to play with you because it wasn't that fun, and you just ended games too quickly, or knocked out that one person too quickly with your Master of Cruelties, or it became, as soon as my commander hits the table, it gets removed and I'm just sitting here doing nothing, right? Again, that's the kind of box you could put yourself in when you make decks like that. If you have another guy in your playgroup with a Kali of the Vast deck who's also doing the Master of Cruelties thing, then okay, well, I guess that then maybe it works out. If everyone's doing that, then it's fine. But if you're the one guy doing that, it doesn't really work out. And a lot of these commanders have really fallen off, probably for that reason. Again, Alesha was the most popular Mardu commander when I first started playing. Then, of course, Edgar Markov came out and very quickly knocked it off the top spot. And then it just kept getting knocked off and knocked off and knocked off. 220 in the format. And again, just in Mardu colors alone, it is the 9th most popular Mardu commander, despite the fact that it's a great commander. But don't see it anymore. I haven't seen this card in ages. I'm really excited about talking about the top 2 here because there's a little bit of story involved. So Karametra, God of Harvests, is a really funny one. There's a kind of a funny story involved with this commander that I literally just talked about with my patrons. I was doing a live stream on my Discord and I went over the story of Karametra and how it became one of the most popular commanders in the entire format. So 3 white and a green. Legendary enchantment creature, very important. God, 6/7. Indestructible, and having those indestructible enchantment gods is always fantastic. They're really hard to get off the table. As long as your devotion to green and white is less than 7, Karametra isn't a creature, which in the commander format is typically an advantage, right? Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may search your library for a forest, plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Still a really great commander, just sort of a good value commander. If you just want sort of an open-ended creature deck, this is probably a good commander for that. The funny thing about this commander, and anyone who's been playing the format for probably 5 or more years will know what this commander was actually used for, though, right? If you've never seen it before, you look at that and go, okay, well, I want to be playing a creature deck because, of course, my commander triggers whenever I cast creatures. Nope, nobody played this as that. I mean, some people did. I used to play against the guy all the time who just had a straight-up creature deck with Karametra and would just kill me with Crater Hoof Behemoth every game, and that's why I hated Crater Hoof Behemoth so much. No, this commander was an enchantment tribal commander. That's right. And there's 3 reasons why. Reason number 1, it's an enchantment. That's it. There's literally nothing on this card that screams enchantment tribal, except for the fact that your commander's an enchantment. That's the only reason. However, there wasn't an again, just like with the populate or the token theme, right? White and green are the best colors for the token theme, or definitely were. Basically every color does it now, without a doubt, and still is the case that the best colors for an enchantment tribal deck were white and green. All the enchantress effects were in white and green. So if you were going to do an enchantress deck back then, you had to do it in white and green colors. But of course, they didn't print a commander for everything back then. So you had to find one, okay? And the real funny story here is the reason why this commander exploded in popularity, and I mean exploded in popularity in the format, it wasn't that popular before, was because it was played on game nights. One of the very earliest game nights videos, I used to watch them all the time, and I recommend if you are new to the format, go watch gameplay videos. It's very important to sort of get a feel for how the format works. I watched a ton of gameplay videos before I ever even put my first commander deck together, so I get a feel for what was going on and the cards people were playing, because it's just very different from every other format, right? And one of the very first game nights they had, Melissa Del Toro was in the game nights, and I believe she works for the Wizards of the Coast. She was like a pro for a while. I think she works for Wizards of the Coast or worked for them or something. And they had her on there, and she brought her Karametra Enchantress deck. And the only reason she had Karametra in the command zone was because it's an enchantment, and I can get a trigger off my Enchantress when I cast it. Right? That's sort of how you were kind of in a box back then when you wanted to do stuff like that. It actually isn't a great commander for that strategy. Of course, now we all know that there's 1,000 way better commanders for doing Enchantress decks in white and green. I mean, there's at least a couple. It actually wasn't a great commander for that at all. I mean, you got a little bit of value off of it because, of course, I cast my commander. It is an enchantment. It counts towards the enchantments in play if I'm looking for that. It gets me a card draw off an Enchantress thing. And if I cast a creature, which, of course, in an enchantment deck, you're not going to have a ton of creatures, but you are going to have some. You will get a forest. And that's not bad. It's not bad value, but, of course, it's not great for that. But she won that game. She won that game on game nights. And man, it just exploded in popularity after that. It became very quickly, first of all, it became the most popular Selesnya commander in the entire format by far. And then on top of that, everyone was doing enchantment tribal with it now. It became the Enchantress commander, even though it's not actually a good Enchantress commander, just because Melissa Del Toro won game nights with it. And I would say she got a little bit lucky there. If you'll watch the game, if I remember correctly, she got a little bit lucky. Even just because she won that game, all of a sudden, everybody started playing Karametra as an Enchantress deck. Pretty funny, actually, I think. And of course, as time went on, and this was for a while, like we're talking years, this was the go-to Enchantress commander. And then, of course, was it C19 where we actually got dedicated, again, that's when they started doing that, we got dedicated actual like Tuvasa, right? We got actual dedicated Enchantress commanders. And then, of course, Sithis, which is just like, okay, like let's just make it easier and easier and easier. Karametra completely fell off a cliff because, of course, everyone was doing, it's still a great commander, but everyone was doing Enchantresses with it. And now we have better Enchantress commanders, so why would I play Karametra anymore, right? That's why it completely fell off a cliff. It went from being the most popular Selesnya commander to now it's ranked 305 in the format to having 6 commanders that are more popular than it in Selesnya colors. And of course, Sithis Harvest Hand being the most popular Selesnya commander, which is obviously the go-to now for Enchantress decks. So it's kind of funny how that all worked out. Still a great commander, though. Try actually building a creature deck with it, because your commander wants you to be casting creatures, right? You might find out it works better for you. And I'm going to end off with another enchantment god. I mean, this is just the original Simic commander, essentially. Kruphix, God of Horizons. 3 blue and a green legendary enchantment creature god. 4/7, indestructible, of course, as long as your devotion to green and blue is less than 7. Kruphix isn't a creature. You have no maximum hand size. And if unused mana would empty from your mana pool, the mana becomes colorless instead. Now, if you look at this commander now, again, if you've never seen this commander before, you look at this now and it's like, not much going on there, right? It's like, okay, whoop-de-doo, I have no maximum hand size. There's lots of ways to do that now in the format. And then also, your mana pool doesn't empty. That's not particularly great, right? This was the OG. Just think about what Simic does now. Think about the stigma attached to Simic in the format. Ramping and drawing cards. That was this deck. That was the Kruphix deck. The Kruphix deck was the OG good stuff Simic deck, where I just ramped a lot and I drew lots of cards and I cast lots of spells. That was the deck. And the reason why it worked great as a commander was, obviously, again, it usually wasn't a creature, so it was hard to get off the table. So you'd have to wait until it turned into a creature, because, of course, your mana pool doesn't empty. So they would just fill up their mana pool with lots of colorless mana to cast their giant Genesis Wave on their turn, and you would have to have enchantment removal, exile enchantment removal, like a Return to Dust. If you didn't, then you had to wait until it turned into a creature so you could swords it or something, right? So then all that colorless mana would go away. But that was the deck. The deck was just the OG Simic good stuff. I draw lots of cards and I ramp lots and I do big splashy X spells. Every Kruphix deck had Stroke of Genius, draw a ton of cards. I have no maximum hand size, so I don't care. Every Kruphix deck has Genesis Wave. They were all doing the same thing, just big old Simic good stuff deck. And it's so funny now that, Simic has that sort of stigma attached to it. That's all Simic does in the format. This was sort of the commander that sort of helped with that sort of mentality that people have about Simic, even though it's really not doing that much, right? Again, you have no maximum hand size. That's good. But when you see that, you're like, okay, well, if I have no maximum hand size, I guess I can draw a ton of cards and not have to worry about discarding. So that's what you did in the deck. Okay, well, I can store my mana, so having lots of lands in play is good. And I know Simic does that stuff well anyway. It already ramps well and draws well. But this commander sort of enabled it to take it to the ridiculous zone or something, right? It's like, okay, well, just doing that kind of good is one thing, but we can go completely insane here and put 50 mana in our mana pool and draw 30 cards, and because our commander is allowing us to do that, right? So sort of the original commander that had that sort of Simic idea of what you're doing in the commander format that everyone used. And again, there wasn't a million Simic commanders back in the day. There's only a few. So this is the one that everyone went after. And it was very much that battle cruiser magic where I'm just doing lots of big splashy things. And I saw it all the time. And I have not seen this guy in ages. He is now ranked 474 in the format. Nobody plays him anymore. Probably because a big reason, even worse than Karametra, there is, how many Simic commanders are there that's doing this thing, right? Probably better. The best example would be like the commanders that are already popular in Simic colors, right? The ones that are currently popular. There are 22 Simic commanders now more popular than Kruphix, God of Horizons. It's the 23rd most popular just Simic commander. Kruphix was probably the 23rd most popular commander in the entire format back when I first started playing. Now it's 23rd just in Simic alone. Pretty crazy to think about. That commander is, I haven't seen it in forever. The format has changed a lot, obviously. Little nostalgia, trip down memory lane for people that have playing the commander format for as long as I have. And for some of you newer guys, it is, oh, wow, that's how the commander format used to be. That's right. Those are all commanders that were crazy popular when I first started playing. I saw them all the time. And again, they weren't printed in commander sets. Were they actually meant to be commanders? That was sort of the era, right? That era when I started playing, I think, again, Gitrog and Hapatra and some of those commanders, certainly like the Locust God, that cycle, that was the era where they really were starting to print legendary creatures with the intention of them being commanders in standard sets, right? So a little trip down memory lane for you guys. I don't see these commanders at all anymore. Let me know in the comments if you still have these decks and if you're still playing them. That is it for today, though, and thanks for tuning in.